from 23 to 28, that's more than 20% speed increase. So if you increase the volumetric flow, so if you increase your nozzle diameter, or even if you don't increase your nozzle diameter, you can probably increase your flow rate, your max flow rate in your K1 or K1 Max or any printer. But this is how to do it with the Creality Print Slicer.
Alright, so I have finally determined how to calibrate my maximum flow volume of filament in order to maximize my speed while not getting under extrusion. And part of it came from, I decided I wanted to switch to the 0.8 millimeter nozzle. I'm sorry, 0.6 millimeter nozzle from the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. And I was aware of the increase in flow rate and wasn't sure how that was going to play out, and don't recall ever seeing where the settings were in any of the slicers that I used, other than I've seen the term thrown around here and there, and I've seen people like on other channels experiment with super high performance printers, and that was a topic they discussed, but never something I pursued. So I installed the 0.6 millimeter nozzle, and it was throttling itself. So it actually wasn't. So I installed it, and I made the lines fatter, and I made the layers thicker, and then I said print, and it was actually slower than the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. So I said, okay, I have some investigation to do. And so I found some things. First of all, if you go up here and you go calibration, I didn't even know this was here. And you go maximum flow. Look around at these things. I also did a temperature tower, and I did this flow tune. But this, I'm sorry, not this one. This one I think is flow acceleration. I'm not sure, but that does a different routine. I looked at it. It's interesting looking. But this, it's a maximum volumetric flow, maximum volume flow. You go here, and so this is so basically. Like for hyper PLA, well, let me back up. So this is going to give you your starting speed, your starting volumetric speed, your ending volumetric speed, and the steps in between, and obviously your hot plate temperature, and then you say OK, and it's going to print this shape, and it's going to vary the flow rate, volumetric speed, and flow rate's the more proper term. From the bottom to the top, and you can see it's a color gradient, and it says over here this is the flow rate. So green, down here it's like 6-ish, and then yellow is 10-ish, and red is 21-ish. And those aren't the numbers that I did it to, but I'm not going to show you that any more of that yet. But so if you go back to prepare, this is kind of hidden. So if you go to PLA, if you click on the PLA, all of a sudden this appears. Like, it's very not intuitive. Anyway, so you can see here it says Hyper PLA copy. So this is where you would pick which PLA. And I never noticed this little pencil over here. So if you click on this little pencil over here, this is where you set your volumetric speed limitation. Right? And so there is also, before I go into this too much, there's also another setting that I thought might be my savior. So if I hit this pencil over here on the printer itself, it gives me some settings for managing the printer. And I found if I go to extruder, this is where you change the nozzle diameter, right? And I was saying to myself, okay, so I did that first step when I put the new nozzle in. I had a hard time finding this actually, but then like I say, the print was actually going slower, and then I realized that if I slice, why can't I slice that? I'm not sure why the slice is grayed out. Oh, it's already sliced. So if I go to anywhere in the print, in the preview, it's telling me down here my speed and flow rate. For some reason it's not. Okay, there we go. So my speed and flow rate are flow rate 26, 26.6, and my speed is 116. So even though my speed is set to 300 or whatever, that's not the speed it's going to go. It's going to go to the speed up to your maximum flow rate. It's just going to be the lower of the two numbers, right? The speed in your settings versus your flow rate in the settings. And if you notice, because I've selected here in this drop down, I've selected flow, and so this red here, which happened, you can see here, is 26.6, and so right here 26.57. And so if I go all these layers, they're all the same color, which I didn't realize, and as I was trying to figure it out, that is why I couldn't get the print speeds that I wanted, and it was cutting down my so the 0.8 millimeter nozzle was actually slower. I'm sorry, I keep saying 0.8. The 0.6 millimeter nozzle is actually slower than the 0.4 millimeter nozzle, even though I increased all the line widths.
All right, I figured it out, how to calibrate for the maximum flow of your nozzle. So if you increase the volumetric flow, so if you increase your nozzle diameter, or even if you don't increase your nozzle diameter, you can probably increase your flow rate, your max flow rate in your K1 or K1 Max or any printer. But this is how to do it with the Creality print slicer. So basically you can when you can set your speeds to whatever you want in your slicer settings, but if it's going to throttle itself based on the maximum flow rate setting, which is not intuitively easy to find. It took me some digging to figure this out. And so if you go into the preferences, I'll edit this in, probably already just saw it, but you go into the calibration tab in the menu in the top left on Creality Print Slicer version 5, and there's a calibrate maximum flow volume. And you may have seen the video that I deleted from yesterday because I was sort of speculating. I thought maybe I had figured out how to do it, and it turned out that was just setting. It's sort of it wasn't the max flow. It was just tuning them for the ideal flow for perfect prints. But this is to tune for max flow. And what I found here today is that I can actually turn it up from 23, which is for hyper PLA anyway. So you do it for each material if you care to increase your speeds. And so I was thinking about today, I think the way it used to be, before Core XY and input shaping and things like that, probably pressure advance, I don't know about that yet, but it used to be that you were physically limited, your speed was limited to the stability of the printer, where with these new technologies, you're not really limited by the speed of the printer, you're limited by the energy into the nozzle, able to keep the plastic melting up to the rate of the extruder. And so it's set from the factory for hyper PLA at 23, I believe it's cubic millimeters per second, but the 23 was the number as I recall. And so what I did here is this is a test. So you tell it in the calibration, you tell it how many at what flow rate to start and at the bottom, and then work its way up as it goes up to increase the flow rate. And so you give it a minimum and a maximum for the test, and then an increment. So 0.5 is the step, and that's fine. And so this one I did first with 23 to 26 by 0.5 steps, and then I looked and I was surprised to see that it was all basically perfect. And so I said, all right, so then I did 26. And you can see I wrote here, this is just, I think probably a good way to do it. It's just wide enough brim here to write HPLA, hyper PLA, 23 to 26 by 0.5, right? And so that was perfect. And so I can save that somewhere with my benchies and stuff. And so then this is HPLA 26 to 30 by 0.5. But then the question becomes, this is what I figured out today, and that's what I wanted to share, is that, like, how can you really tell at what height is what speed, right? What flow rate? And so, and as you can see there, I think, hopefully, there are some gaps. And so those gaps are where you're starting to have problems. And the higher up you go, the more the gaps are. And that makes sense because it's trying to flow more and more material, and eventually it gets to a point where it can't flow that much material. And so then how do you determine? So what I determined, you need one of these guys, vernier calipers here. And I like the dial kind because I I had a digital one years ago. I bought off a buddy of mine. I should have known better. He got me on that one because it didn't have an auto shut-off. It was a digital one, but it didn't have an auto shut-off. Really nice calipers. I paid too much for them from him. And every time I would use them, the battery would be dead after because I wouldn't turn it off. Because everything else, most other things have an auto shut-off for that reason. But this is older technology, I guess. But anyway, so I know that I did 26 to 30. So that's actually 5. So 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So that's actually five numbers. But by 0.5 steps. So 10. And so I measured it, and it's 0.4. It's 0.405. So let's call it 0.4 thick. And so if I divide by 10, so then 0.04 would be each half of a number, right? And so I just said, looking at this, I could see that they were all basically perfect. There's one little spot here somewhere where I was surprised to see right on the first layer, a tiny gap. And so I threw that out, yeah, right here. I threw that out as an outlier. And so I just went right to 0.08. So 0.4 divided by 10 would be 0.04. So 0.08 would be a whole number of flow rate separation, right? If it makes sense the way I say that. So I go to 0.08, right? And now I can go right from the bottom and I can just trace right around and see. I'm like, okay, that one is getting close, but it's not there yet. And I can basically, it's a little tricky. I can go around the inside if I wanted to, but you don't need to. And so then I'm just tracing this along here, and that one's close, but not there yet, right? And so that would basically go all the way around, and I'm fine. So that was at 27, because it's 26 to 30, right? And I went up 0.08, so that's at 27. So then if I go up another 0.04, so now I'm at 0.12, right? And so that's 26 and a half. And so here I got a bad one. I'm sorry, 27 and a half. So 27 and a half, there's a bad one little gap, another gap, just below that one. And so basically you measure it, divide, do the division, and then you know how high each step is. So basically, most of the way around with the 27 and a half, it was fine. There's one, another one, just below that one, just below that one. So those, when I say just below, those are going to be, I believe, the 27 and a halves. I'm going to go ahead and try it with 27 and a half, and maybe even 28, because it's not an issue on the first layer. So if I'm doing something where I want a perfect first layer, which I've been doing a lot of lately because of my new textured print bed on my K1, and not so much on this one, but also on this one, because actually what I've been doing lately is I've been doing these I made a few of these sort of dry erase clipboards, and they work really well. Like this is actually not an ideal one. I get a better one here, I think. Yeah, I got a stack of rejects here. Like I got a nicer one inside. But basically, you end up, if you do this is tune the Z offset. I did a minus 0.08 millimeters on the Z offset, so it would really smash the layer in. And this is super smooth. And with a pencil, it writes great, and you can clean it off with an eraser or even just a wet cloth like a dry erase board. I can also do dry erase marker, although it stains it a little bit, but it's good enough that if you don't care about it being perfectly clear. So initially I was doing it as a dry erase board, but then I figured out that the pencil just works awesome on it, right? And so that's what I'm sort of using these for. And I figured I'll leave, got one on my desk. I got few out here, so that way if I need to write some, that's how it came up. I had a piece of scrap. I needed to write down some numbers for something and bring them inside, and I didn't have a piece of paper handy, and so I just grabbed a piece of scrap print and wrote on it with a Sharpie. And then I thought, hey, that'll be cool to do that. But anyway, so meanwhile back at the ranch, where was I? Yeah. So so my point is that on the first layer is going plenty slow anyway, so the max flow rate isn't going to be an issue likely, even for something that I want the perfect first layer for, because that's why I print those clipboards upside down, so I get the perfect first layer, if I didn't make that clear. And I just print it out solid all the way through. I don't know, like 150 thick or something like that. I tuned it by the layer numbers because I put some I embedded some magnets in there too, which is another story. But so focus, squirrel. All right, so so the first layer won't be an issue, and then subsequent layers like in the middle, if I have a few gaps here and there, I really don't care on my prototype / structural / tool parts, which I don't do like art figurines and things like that in general that I care. Like, I'm not selling these prints. If I was selling them, maybe I'd care, but I'm not, and I don't for the most part. And so I think I'm going to try 28. So that's pretty good. So from 23 to 28, that's going up. That's like more than 20%, right? Yeah, that's more than 20% speed increase. So, you know, something that would have taken an hour would now take 4/5 an hour, whatever that is. I don't feel like doing math because, you know, whenever you do math live, you always screw it up. So you do the math. 4/5 of an hour instead of an hour. So that sounds good to me. I actually printed a benchy the other day, just when I was first messing with some settings, and I got that to like a 16-minute something benchy, which is pretty cool. So I'll have to see when I change that flow rate what I can get that benchy speed down to. So anyway, thanks for watching, and stay tuned, or maybe there's more to come in this video. Probably going to add an intro and definitely show where the settings are, and do a little screen capture, whatever, video capture, and a little narration on there for you, and probably edit this stupid speech out. But anyway, that's how you basically calibrate for your max flow rate, and I'll show you in the slicer settings where, because it's hidden. It's quite hidden where these settings are. It's funny that the settings are in like 5 different places. It's tricky the way they do it. But I guess this one, it's because it's in the filament settings, but not in your setup settings. Like there's like 2 different sets of filament settings, or maybe 3, I don't know. But I'll show you. So stay tuned.
All right, well, I was going to say there's good news and bad news. I was going to say the good news is that I'm not seeming to have under extrusion issues, but it does seem to be doing a little bit of waviness. So I guess that, unless I missed a layer of infill. Yeah, so I guess 28 is a little too fast. In my measurements, in my calibration, it looked like 26 was still going to be perfect, or almost perfect, and so I was going to go 27, and I decided to go 28 and see how it came out. And I was going to say, and the bad news is that the corner curled up, which these prints have been printing fine without curling up when I didn't get to the point where I was under extruded. So I am going to have to dial it back from the 28. So I'll try, I guess I'll try like 20, I guess I'll try 27 next. We'll see how that does. It might be okay for some prints, but for this print, not so much. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit and try again. You know what, though? Actually, I wonder if I did a thinner layer, if that would make a difference. I think I'm going to try that, because I did a very thick layer. This is a 4.45 millimeter thick layer. So that may be contributing. So maybe I'll narrow the layer and try it again just to see. So stay tuned and we'll figure it out. So interesting realization here. I had upped the volume, as I mentioned, up to 28, and that was failing fairly miserably. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to move it down to 27. But then I realized, you know, I'm only printing at 230. I wonder if I set it up to 240, will I fry the filament, or will it then allow it to flow a little bit more, and then it'll be okay? And it's actually printing mostly nice, a little bit flawed, but acceptable. And that's tough to judge this layer because it's right over the infill. So it's actually mostly really good, other than I'm still getting a little bit of curling on the corner. Arguably, that's my own fault for not using a brim. But I try not to use a brim unless I have to, because I don't like the sort of ragged edge that it leaves. But anyway, if you really want to up your speed and don't need perfect quality, you can always go even hotter. And maybe not so much on other, like Silk PLA or something, I'm not sure. But this being Hyper PLA seems to be okay. Anyway, just thought I would mention that. So I'm still I actually went and I started to change it to 27 cubic millimeters per second for the max flow rate, and decided to instead try upping the temperature, and that seems to be working out really well. So 40 times 150%, let me say that a different way, 0.4 millimeters times 150% is 0.6 millimeters, right? So I increased my line width by 150%. Don't let these percents are not, these percents are percent of the set nozzle diameter, so these are percent from 0.6. So I increased the line width by 50%, and I increased the layer height by basically, I basically doubled it. What was my thought process there? I don't know. Anyway, I did more than 50% on the layer height, and so I'm thinking, it should be super fast. I basically went to the maximum thickness just by the ratio of the standard settings for the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. But anyway, so yeah, so back in here, I meant to show this. Back in the manage printer settings, I found in motion ability the maximum speeds for XYZ and extruder. Now this was one of the earlier things that I found that I said, oh, maybe this will save me, because this was 100, and increasing it to like 225, which was my first logical number that I changed it to, and that seemed to help. It got a little faster, and I said, oh, that must be my flow rate limitation, is the extruder maximum speed limitation. So I figured that would help me, and so 225 seemed to help. And then I increased it to like 500, and that didn't seem to add any. And then I went up to here, and that didn't seem to add any. And I still couldn't get to where it was under extruding, so I knew something else had to be throttling it, right? And so I get out of here, and so I go back into here, and here is where the setting is. Now the stock setting for the volume, the stock setting for Hyper PLA was 23, and so I ran the flow test, which I will show later in the video, or maybe I already showed it. Haven't edited the video yet, so I'm not sure which way it's going to go. But you could see there how I determined that 28 should be pretty damn good. I'm looking on I'm monitoring a print right now, which is basically this what you see on the plate, and getting a little roughness on layer 2, it looks like, but not sure what the deal is. But I don't think it's under extruding. Maybe. So I ran the test, and the test said that at first I did like 23 to like 30 or 32 or whatever, and it seemed to be failing like crazy. I have that one in front of me. Like, it wasn't failing at the bottom, but it wasn't at the top. But what happened is I forgot to record what my settings were, so you kind of lose that. So you either save your G code, or I'll show you my workflow is I go to calibration, and I go to maximum volume flow, and I set it to, so the first one I did, I don't remember the numbers I did exactly, and I was unsure how to interpret the numbers, but I show it later in this video or earlier in this video, whichever. So I went like 23 to 26. And so the important thing is to go print screen or snipper tool or however you do a screen capture. You do the screen capture, and if you're in Windows 10, you have to save it. If you're on Windows 11, it automatically saves it to your, or maybe you have to set it to, but it automatically saves it to your screenshots folder. And so now I have a record that I can go back to, because once I hit OK here, now I don't know what my settings are anymore, because it's going from, this scale goes from 5 to 27, right? When I did 20 to 20, or I did 23 to 26, right? I think. So, but in my case, so I did this one at 23 to 26 because I thought it was going to be somewhere between there where I would have a problem, and that one basically came out perfect. And so then I went back. I went and it locked up. Nice. Let's try that again. Yes, please. Open it. No, not that one. K1 Max copy 0.4. Jeez, I hope it saved my materials. Let's say save. I don't know. I don't know what I don't want to overwrite anything. So let's go to K1 Max 0.4. I guess this guy. It's funny, it adds the 0.4 nozzle, like it's 0.6 nozzle, but it's wrote 0.4 on there. It should be, now I have to verify that. Yeah, 0.6. This guy, oops, no, this guy 999. I'm not even sure what that should be, but it's going to be limited by the flow rate. Anyway, so it really doesn't matter. That could be 1 billion, as far as I understand. All right, so this is what it is, and let's go into, yeah, we're in calibrate and maximum flow rate, right? And so I did basically 23 to 26, and then I did 26 to 30, and so let's just say I did 23 to 30. You know what though? Actually, now that I think about it, it's smart to do it like divisible by 10 number of steps. So so because the way I show it, I'm measuring it with the vernier calipers. It's just easier to figure out if you do it in 10 steps. So like the step is 0.5, so I'm better off doing like 23 to 27. So that's actually 10 places, right? Because it's going by a half of a millimeter per square millimeter cubed per second. So anyway, you want 10. I recommend 10 overall steps, so that way it's easy to divide, and then you can use your so in this case I would do a print actually I wouldn't even do this one though. I would do here, I would do, because I know 23 is fine, so I would go 24 to 28, then 0.5, so that's 10 steps, so it's easy to do math with. And then I do a print screen, and then I save it, and now I have a record of it, and then I say OK, and then I have this guy, and I do the land print or save locally, whichever way you like to do it, and then print it, and then do the steps that I show in the other part of the video with the vernier in order to determine where it's satisfactory for you. And so what I found was that at like 27 it had a couple of imperfections, and I said that's probably good enough. And so I think I went to 28 here. So if I go back out of here and I go into, oh, that's annoying, I go into here, hyper PLA copy. So let's see if it has my settings right here. Scroll down to here, and 28. Yep. So the print I'm printing right now is at 28 millimeters cubed per second. Cubic millimeters per second. And I'm hoping that'll work. And so from 23, which was the stock setting, to 28, that's +5. That is more than 20% speed increase over the factory setting. So that's quite the gain. Now, I don't know if I'm actually gaining anything over the 0.4 millimeter nozzle, because I could go faster, right? Because these printers can move really fast. Like the older bed slingers, without without input shaping and pressure advance and core XY, couldn't move nearly as fast. So I think you could gain a lot by a larger nozzle size. But whereas the limitations, like I always thought the travel speed was, until now, I thought it was mostly the travel speed that would be the limitation on my print speed. Whereas this testing that I've been doing past couple days, maybe the past week or so, I've realized that the motion of the print head is not generally the limitation on a printer like the K1. Because as you can see here, if I go back to my, I don't have anything on the print bed because it's locked up. Let me put these, that's G-code. Actually, yeah, I can just drag my G-code into here. Well, let me open it this way. Yeah, nice. So if I go down here, if I go down into one of these solid layers, and I go to somewhere in the middle, you can see right here that the speed is only 116, even though my speed in here is set to, I'm going to set it to 400, 300, so I'm going to overspeed it. That doesn't do squat for you because the flow rate is the limitation. I'm only hitting speeds of 116 here. So if I go back to my smaller nozzle, I think I can still print just as fast, just in a better detail. So actually, unless you can get, I'm going to reserve judgment on it until I do test with the 0.4 millimeter nozzle again. And I'll probably just do the similar test on my K1. I guess I can do that, which will be close enough to apples, I think. Because basically, it's basically the same. It's not the same hot end, actually. That's not the same print head, actually. No, it's not just about the hardened stuff, because I actually just swapped to the quick swap nozzle on the K1 Max, and the K1 does not have this quick swap nozzle, and the heat sink is different between the two, so one might be better than the other. And I also noticed one tricky thing, which I'm going to touch on in a future video, so subscribe if you might find this interesting. But there's no set screw on the quick change nozzle, and so there's nothing pushing the forcing contact between the heat break and the heatsink, right? And so you're only relying on the thermal paste, and that makes it even worse because it's hard to get the thermal paste into the quick change nozzle setup, especially if you don't take the rubber sock off, the silicone sock off of the hot end, because even if you do take the sock off the silicone hot end, if you put the thermal paste on the heat break and then screw it up through, you're going to scrape most of that thermal compound down off of the fat part of the heat break where you want contact with the heat sink, and it's going to come down, and the thermal compound is going to be at the narrow part of the heat break, which is supposed to be the heat break. But if you put thermal compound in there, which the purpose of thermal compound is to increase thermal contact, therefore thermal transfer, heat transfer, that you're defeating the purpose of the heat break by getting the thermal compound in there. So you can't really put the thermal compound in from the bottom. What I did though on this time is I actually put the thermal compound in from the top, which is really hard to see what you're doing. Basically, you take the nozzle out. While the nozzle's out, I basically put on one of the acupuncture pins, that comes to clean your nozzle out. I put some thermal compound on that and went in from the top, but you can't see what you're doing. So I'm actually thinking about drilling out that hole under the extruder so I can access that better. I have to think about if I really want to do that. I think I'm going to. And in theory, it makes the print head even lighter, and so maybe could result in higher speed printing. But now I go that I was thinking that, but now I go back to speed. Really, linear travel speed isn't the bottleneck. The bottleneck is volumetric flow rate of the molten plastic, it seems. So I'll have to do some more testing to determine how full of beans that I am there, as they used to say back in the day before, when there was less swearing in family households. Anyway, yeah, I'm old. Do they say that anywhere? Does anybody say that anymore? I remember my parents used to say that, "You full of beans." But anyway, so yeah, so I'll let you know how this print comes out. Maybe I'll go take a little bit of a live action and do a little more commentary on that. But that's the basics of it. Did I cover everything? So I covered where to set the PLA, and make sure you save it. Make sure you save the copy, because when the software locks up, as it often does, you lose your settings if you didn't save it. So volumetric speed. Did I change anything else in here? I like the 230 temperature. It gives me a nice first layer, and I mostly don't care too much about the first layer, but lately I've been printing these dry erase kind of boards. It's a new thing I discovered, and it makes for a great sort of clipboard and dry erase board, but you write on it with pencil, and you can erase it or you can wipe it wet, and it's really nice, really nice feeling with a pencil. And so anyway, I'm putting the first layer and other layers at 230 just so I get a really good melt, unless I get too much. I did the thermal calibration also, and there really was very little difference between all the layers, and I like the strength of the hotter print. And I figure it also probably helps with I wonder if I go hotter than 230, if I could increase my flow rate and get away with it. I wonder how hot I'd have to go before I cooked the filament. That's an interesting question. Maybe I'll have to. Let me know what you think in the comments. If there's any other ideas, different ways I could try to break my printer. All right. Anyway, did I change anything else? These look to be all factory settings. Although, that's not, because these were 220. So these settings are funny, because usually in other places, if you change something, it gives you this little arrow here, this circle arrow to undo. But these, I remember, these were at 220, not 230. So this changes the temperature for each layer automatically with the average flow speed of that layer. I am not sure exactly what that means, so I'm not going to do anything with it. So I could set my cooling here and mess with that. I was trying to find a way to. Somebody said that I can adjust my Z offset in the settings somewhere in here. I still don't find it. So if you know where that is, let me know, please, in the comments. Did I change anything here? Looks like not. You probably have to click this advanced tab too, also, to get what you want. This plus 100 hyper PLA plus 125%. That's when I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And I finally got it to under extrude, which is actually a win for me, because I experimented with so many different settings before I could even get it to under extrude, which was telling me I could go faster. So where am I getting throttled? And that ended up being, as I said, in right and here, this volumetric flow rate, max volumetric speed is where you save that. And if don't hit save, because it's going to make another copy, you just X out. It's weird. It's goofy like that. So you just X out of it, and then here you are. So that was the settings for the filament, and if I have to back out here to get settings for the printer, and so that's where I put the 0.6, and may need to increase the motion max speed of the extruder. It'd be interesting to put it back to 100 and see what happens. Let's do that. This was 100. So I'm just going to X out of here. And so what I find myself doing is I'm going to save that, and okay, and I go back in here just to verify that I didn't hit save, that it did change properly. And I lost my models. Well, I will just open them back up again. Happen to know solid joiner and flat top. Those are the two. Will it play nice? Nope. Alright. So I basically had this, and I sliced them. So right here, I'm checking to see if I really needed to increase that extruder setting. And if I go down here somewhere, that should be a good spot. What am I, layer 3? Okay, layer 3. And I go back here, and my speed is down to 74. And what's my flow rate? It's down to 17. So can I check my extruder speed? I guess not. But so I'm down to 74. I want to say it was like 119 or something. So I am going to go back. Oops, no, that's not where I need to go. I'm going to go back into motion, and I'm just going to put it at 500, 555. And so what did I say that was, like 70 something? So now if I slice it, now, so still at 74. All right then. What layer am I on? Layer 3. What did I do wrong? Save. Save. Let's try that again. All right. If I may have just broke my brain. It's throttling it to 74 now. Was that what I was getting before? Let's do this. What? Yeah, whatever. Go to G-code archives, and it's asking me to open. I said open project. I didn't mean to open project. I meant to add a model. And if I go to G-code archives, then this is the latest shelves one. I have to say open. And this is speed 116. All right. Is 555 not high enough? Let's back out of here. If I actually slice this model, and if you caught the difference there, the speed of the G-code versus of the sliced version. So this is the sliced version just now, and I'm at 74. So let's go back into here and put this back up to 999 and see if that gets me back. It seems like, I hope that gets me back, because I tell you, I was in confusion hell for a while. That why is it still 74? I'm not understanding this. 74. So my flow rate is now restricted to 20. Now that's confusing. Oh, I think I know why. Because I have two different PLAs selected. Yeah, that's generic PLA. versus. All right, so I'm going to change this. Haha. I have to redo my test here. Maybe. Let's see. So I want hyper PLA copy and slice. This should get me back up into the 116 or whatever, other than, that's weird. Yeah, so 116. Let me go back into the printer management there again. And so that's at 999. Oops. So if I go back to 100, let's see. So at some point, I was on the wrong PLA, so I have to redo that. All right. So let's do the 100 and slice. And okay, even at 100, I'm still at 116, and my flow rate is in the high 20s. Oh, it says right there, 26.6. Okay, so yeah, I guess I did not need to increase my extruder speed. But if you find yourself not maximizing your flow rate when you're doing these things, then you can. It could be that your extruder speed limit is throttling you. Oh, it looks like I'm curling up on the ends of this print. That's kind of not cool. That's strange because it wasn't doing that on previous prints. Huh. Well, all right, did I cover everything? I covered the printer management settings to increase your nozzle. I covered the filament management to increase your flow volume, and I covered the procedure for determining your maximum flow rate. Okay, so I guess that's it for that. All right, so thanks for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe and comment, ask any questions. Feel free to ask questions. I always try to answer the questions real quick, and any criticisms or any suggestions, and maybe share it with your like-minded friends. Maybe throw it on Reddit or wherever if you find it interesting, rather than me trying to promote my own stuff on there. I know they don't like that. Ask me how I know. Anyhow, so thanks for watching, and keep your glue stick in a vise, and don't let your heart in. We'll frickin' see you later. Yes, I am stealing everybody's taglines.